Hello and welcome to the Multicultural Center. My name is Jerry Clement. I am the Director of Cultural Fluency, Equity and Inclusion, and I also oversee the center here. It's amazing and exciting to see you all here to come and listen today to Steve, who is Dean in the trades area. We just met and we started a conversation. He's like, I want to do something for Black History Month, and that conversation went on to what we are having today, which is a musical from him. And so I'm really excited and I'm eager to just learn today and just listen to music. So thank you all and welcome. Enjoy the space here, and I hope to see you again in the near future. So Steve, welcome.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for coming. I just have a couple things, but I'll try to sing for most of it. I'm Steve, and I'm a tenor, and in the male voice world, that would tend to be people who sing a little higher. And in my case, I'm a little bit more of what some people call a Hilden tenor, which means I have a baritone-style voice, but I can't sing low. That would be the way to actually characterize me. And then, of course, Sandy is my piano player. Now, lots of you know my background. Thank you. And but Sandy, let's hear a little bit about what you have. 30 seconds.
Oh,
so.
Started out at the University of Minnesota planning to be a piano performance major, and that didn't go well, and so I went over and decided to be a lab technician. Well, that was great till I married a dairy farmer and moved up to this part of the world and had to be able to be at work within 15 minutes of time, and that didn't work. So I spent 40 years raising dairy calves. My husband and I now have retired from dairy farming. That was my full-time job. I always told my kids at school, I went to school to spend time with two-legged critters, and when I was tired of two-legged critters, I went back home to the four-legged ones that were at home, and so I got the best of both worlds. So Steve and I have worked together for close to 30 years, and he's one of my good friends, and I'm glad to be here today.
Cool. So we'll dive right into the rules. These are really important for you, Dr. Kirchhoff. Come and go as you need. Okay. Sometimes in these settings, we feel like we have to be really formal. And you should not feel that way in this work environment. Eat cookies. I bought 5 dozen cookies last night, and I think we all know that if I bring them home, this is not good. Feel free to ask questions along the way. I have a few spots in here where I might ask you. But if you have a question along the way, I'll give you the best answer I can. I won't lie to you, though. So if I don't know. Also, feel comfortable doing the things you would normally do over lunch. If you need to text or check an email or you're eating or all those things, that's okay. It's no big deal. Sandy and I aren't offended. And then, of course, don't forget to eat cookies. So let's dive right in. This is the first. I'll sing one tune, and we'll interact a little bit more about some other things. I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, let me tell my mother how I come along. Oh, give me little time to pray. With a hung down head and an aching heart, oh, give me little time to pray. I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, when I get to heaven, I'll walk all about. Oh, give me little time to pray. There'll be nobody there to turn me out. Oh, give me little time to pray. I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, give me little time to pray. You know what I mean? So let's talk a little bit, since we have a short amount of time. I'm singing some African American spirituals today, also called, historically called Negro spirituals, or just spirituals. So these things are important to know about them. They're created by enslaved Africans after their arrival, sometime between 1619 and 1860. If you're looking for the source of this information, it was sort of attached to those emails. It's not because I'm an excellent historian and that I know these things. I don't deserve credit for finding this information, but I don't have my source credited here. Think of things about resolve and sometimes joy, stories of life, death, faith, hope, escape, survival. These folks wanted to make music. They lived a life, often from birth to death, of total oppression. And yet, things like the opportunity to write down, they were not afforded to them. And at some point, the use of instruments was taken away from them. Some concern over whether they would be safe for enslaved people to have those kinds of things. So what you're hearing today were literally handed down just vocally over generations. And it's really important for me. I draw those connections to not so much through the suffering piece, but when I think of my dad and going hunting. And the things, so we didn't write any of that down, but I learned things about hunting with my dad. And so, or when it came time to fix my truck, or when I need help, I've got a problem when I'm trucking, something diesel, and I could say, Dad, this is the air problem I'm having. What's happening? Generation to generation. Nowadays, they've all been written down, many of them have been written down, and often by scholarly folks, including Harry T. Burley, who's here, who is the arranger of the things that I'm singing today. So I'm singing a scholarly version of these pieces of music. Harry was... This is a fascinating thing for me. There's a collection of these things. Harry was a fantastic musician. Here's how he fell in love with African American spirituals. His grandfather was a slave who went blind and was then discarded. We got everything we need out of you. We're done with you. And so Harry, as a small boy, it was Erie, Pennsylvania. He would travel to town with his grandfather because his grandfather needed somebody to help him get places. And his grandfather would sing some of these pieces of music. And so having that, again, that generational connection to the trade itself and to the material. Harry was a fantastic musician, but of course he couldn't get in certain places. And so ultimately, there's a story about him wanting to hear a performance, and he was not allowed inside. So he stood outside the window and froze and became very, very, very ill. But it was worth it to him for his art, for his passion, for his trade. Again, I think back to just a few weeks ago when my dad got stuck plowing snow and 5 hours laying underneath that truck. Those sacrifices you make for the people you love and for the things that you're passionate about. At the same time he was doing that stuff, my ancestors were moving here from Germany and owning land. And they were putting together a collection to send him to college. Here's another example of a tune called Give Me Jesus. Sandy, we'll probably just sing one verse of this. Page 39. Oh, when I come Oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, you may have all this world, give me Jesus. So the message there is often seems dark to us. But for folks in this situation who are enslaved, the hope was the next life. Does that make sense? So for me, as a person who grew up in Staples, where as far as I'm concerned there was no diversity, I didn't understand the context until I started working on my trade. I didn't understand the stories. I didn't understand the life that must have been like. This was my opportunity. So we sometimes will hear spirituals and we'll think they're a little dark. And we'll think, man, is it only sad songs? And you want to listen to it through the lens of what was their life like. Okay? We call that kind of stuff cultural fluency. There's lots of definitions for this. And by the way, for those of you who make a living doing this every day, I apologize if the definition is not particularly clear. The ability to understand perspectives of people from other cultures, adapt and respond in ways that help you achieve shared meaning. So for me, it's not so much about people need to change so that you match me, but I need to work harder at what I understand so I get the world around me better. And without the trade of singing, this being my work, I would not have understood various cultural things. There are other cultural stuff that I encountered, but since it's Black History Month, we're doing spirituals, right? So this is what that kind of stuff means to me. Think about how cultural fluency might impact your work in your particular trade. And the idea is not that there's a right or wrong or an amount, but do you ever think about the work you do in the context of those around you? Or, think about working in a school. You're going to do a remodel project in a school. What's the best time to do that? Summer. Because of the culture. And yet, anybody else who builds a home might say, that's stupid, build it, get it done, right? So there's lots of different ways in the trades that we can approach this concept. So here we go, terminology. Tom Hansen.
Yes, sir.
Tom Hansen said to me the other day, I can't read music. So when Sandy and I take a look at music, I may have lost a page. When Sandy and I are taking a look at music, this is what we're doing. We're looking at terminology. In your world, for some of you, it's your basic tools and fasteners. What is the stuff you have to do the work, right? Language. What language is it in? We often talk about in the transportation world, am I working on this type of vehicle or this type of vehicle, or am I using this computer program for this type of problem? Coding in the IT world, we have variables, data, structures, learning how to classify different forms of information. What resources do you have? Do I have a piano? Do I have a lift? What are my available talents? Do I have a transmission person, or do we just have to send it off to get it done? Environment? I have all the dreams in the world, but if this is how big my HVAC lab is, this is how much work I can get done. Right? There is no difference between what we're doing. Context. What's the design? What was the intent? We often think about things not just through getting through now in the moment, but what's the intent? And again, context, fluency, and audience. When I perform, I don't often do this stuff. But here I am in a higher education spot, right, with my colleagues who are wondering, why did I do this? By the way, cookies for those of you who just got here. Get them any time. So here's what I mean, Tom. I'm going to teach you all a little bit about what I'm looking at. This is a blueprint. We use blueprints in the trades, right? We use wiring schematics, things like that. Anybody seen a blueprint like this before? Some basic elements. Let me give you a couple of things. Here are some indicators. This is the line that I read. This is the line that Sandy reads. We both do our own trade from the same blueprint, plumbing and electrical. same house. We have some indications of things to do. So while we are actually reading the music part, this tells us what speed we're going to go. This information gives us some context clues about what's the style going to be. This right here gives us information about how loud are we going to get, and then are we going to get softer? Where are we going to start? Notice here the word morning is really the word morning, but because of cultural influencing and understanding the impact of things, we want to use a dialect that's sort of true to the intent, right? Then we go here. Music is vertical and horizontal. We understand our rhythm going this way, so we are reading music this way and also vertical. So those of you who are singers or non-singers, this note is a higher pitch than this note. You can see it, correct? So you're going to follow along. That's your directive. Sandy and I are going to sing just a couple bars of this. Go ahead, Sandy. So you can see her right here. My Lord, what a morning. My Lord, what a morning. Oh, my Lord, what a morning. When the stars begin to fall, when the stars begin to fall. Anybody notice anything between here and here that maybe could have been done differently? Let me give you a hint. This indicator tells me how loud to sing. Anybody know what this one means? Soft. This one here, mezzo forte, by the way, different language. This tells me that I should sing kind of more natural, maybe a little bit louder. There was very little difference. I made a mistake. Very little difference. Okay, now that you all can read the blueprint, and Steve Gilmore's here, by the way, cookies. Here we go. Sandy, give us 2 bars, and you're all going to sing with me. Now, don't worry about it. There's no judging. My Lord, I can't hear you. What a morning. My Lord, Morton Hanson, what a morning. Oh, my Lord, what a morning. When the stars begin to fall. More, Steve Gilmore. When the stars begin to fall. Why didn't you sing? Some of you did. Why didn't you? Now be honest. Why didn't you? It's okay. Why didn't you? Be very open about the feeling.
I have no steering wheel to sing to. That's where I do.
It's a good one, right? Your comfort context is different, right? Anybody afraid of making a mistake? Anybody afraid of sounding stupid? Anybody afraid of inaccuracy? Anybody ever encounter in a trade, it's nice to see so many trades folks here, by the way. Anybody ever encounter in a trade a student who's nervous about a mistake they might make and then that impacts their work? Are you ever nervous about, right? You don't want to be the person who repairs the transmission and it comes back? There's no difference. We read the blueprint, we do the best we can, and the environment we tried to create, was don't worry about what you're not. Have a little fun with it, right? So there's that connection. Now that you're all good music readers, I'm going to sing this tune, and if I manage this thing correctly, you're going to have the opportunity to follow along with everything. So it's cute and neat if you listen to me sing, and that's great. But what I really want you to do is imagine what it's like in the similarity. Thanks, Jeff. You'll lose about 1/3 of your daily work points.
Sounds right.
I want you to think about what's happening in collaboration between our two trades. What indicators are we following? What could all this stuff mean? Slow down, get softer. Tempo means go back to the normal. Sandy, I gotta make sure I got some pages in here that look like they don't belong. Imagine that. So we're looking for what? 162.
Page 21.
Oh, okay, got it. I'm past that. Thank you. Notice we collaborate together here in our art. Anybody have any questions right now, by the way?
Well, Steve, you said I could flip the pages. That's one thing I could do, but you see how they got it mixed up already? It'd been only worse if I would done it.
And, all right, I will try to flip these along the way. I got a home in a dead rock, don't you see? I got a home in a dead rock, don't you see? Between the earth and sky, thought I heard my Savior cry. You got a home in a dead rock, don't you see? Home and Lazarus, poor as I, don't you see? Home and Lazarus, poor as I, don't you see? Home and Lazarus, poor as I, when he died, he found a home on high. He had a home in a dead rock, don't you see? Rich man died easy, lived so well, don't you see? Rich man died easy, lived so well, don't you see? Rich man died easy, lived so well, when he died he found a home in hell. He had no home in a dead rock, don't you see? God gave Noah a rainbow sign, don't you see? God gave Noah a rainbow sign, don't you see? God gave Noah a rainbow sign, no more water but fire next time. Sorry, I forgot to turn. Better get a home in a dead rock, don't you see? Ask if you saw this word stringendo and you could figure out what I did vocally to imitate that. No more water but fire next time. How the blueprint influences the work we do, right? Everyone feels this experience. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts, questions, reactions? Did I succeed at all in making a connection between my skilled trade background and the interconnectedness with everything? One of the things I remember, and I remember feeling, and this is an important message, I would not be here today if there was not a culture of acceptance here for the potential for people with differences to be able to coexist. If you, as a community, had decided there was no possible way a person with a music background could be a dean in the skilled trades, I would not be here. And that's, for me, that's my personal lived experience. And if you get a chance to read a lengthy and somewhat wordy and boring bio that was connected to an email, thanks, Roseanne, for helping eliminate some of that mess. There are tons of things I left out when I applied for the position because I was afraid that if I talked too much about who I really was, we may lose sight of who I could be. Does that make sense? And that's the connection I think we all face. Any other questions, thoughts? This is the last thing, so we're going to end right on time. I know that President Kloos was worried about my ability to end on time.
I say even that the song "Give Me Jesus" at our parish for funerals, we will sing that today. So it's just a history that continues on, and people relate to.
Yeah, and you know, it's part of our history. It's not just Black history, it's all our history. This is the country we live in, and this is our history. And so one of the most inspiring pieces for me is when I think about, I mentioned earlier about while my ancestors were moving here from Germany and buying 400 acres of land just outside of Staples, where I still live, what was their reality? And that's that cultural fluency. I don't understand all things for anyone, but the idea that there are things I don't understand and to seek understanding is really the next step, in my opinion. So I appreciate the opportunity to do my trade and to approach it the same way. Any other thoughts, questions about anything? Things I can actually answer? I want to say a special thanks to Sandy. She drove an hour one way to get here today, and the pay is not good for her. all the cookies are going. It's an honor to have so many of you here today. Thank you for including me. This is I sung this song 20 years ago and put it on a CD. And when we talk about influences and forces, my voice is very different now. I've spent a lot of years teaching and didn't condition it the same way. Much like we talk about technicians, and after 20 or 30 years, they need to do something different as their body sort of gives out. But this, I didn't know at the time how much this song would mean to my mother, who passed away with cancer, but ultimately was influenced by dementia. And her connection to this trade, we could not have a meaningful conversation for the last year or two of her life. But when she heard this recording of this she changed. And so from a personal standpoint, it's an honor to make music for you all, and I hope that we think of ourselves all as just trades folks. We're all working our trade. And thanks for having Sandy and I here today. Oh, by and by, I'm going to lay down this heavy load. Oh, by and by, I'm going to lay down this heavy load. I know my robe's gonna fit me well. I'm going to lay down my heavy load. I tried it on at the gates of hell. I'm going to lay down my heavy load. Oh, by and by, I'm going to lay down this heavy load. Oh, somebody's morning's bright and fair. I'm going to lay down my heavy load. Gonna take my wings and cleave the air. I'm going to lay down my heavy load. Oh, by and by, I'm going to lay down this heavy load. Please eat cookies. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me, Deborah, Jerry.